What can a VA loan be used for? Buying, building, improving a home, or purchasing a manufactured home/lot. And hashtag 128313 VA loan limits and entitlement. What is the basic VA entitlement amount? $36,000, which helps secure loans up to $144,000. What is the maximum VA loan amount without a down payment, in most areas? $417,000, based on secondary entitlement. Can entitlement be restored and reused? Yes, through restoration, after sale or loan payoff, or partial entitlement, if not fully used. And hashtag 128313 VA loan funding fee. Why is a funding fee required on VA loans? To keep the VA loan program running without taxpayer support. Can the VA funding fee be waived? Yes, for veterans with 10% plus VA disability or qualifying surviving spouses. How can the funding fee be paid? It can be paid in cash at closing or rolled into the loan amount. And hashtag 128313 VA loan application and closing rules. What is a Certificate of Reasonable Value, CRV? A VA-approved appraisal that sets the max value the VA will guarantee. Who can pay VA loan closing costs? Buyer, seller, or both are negotiable, with VA restrictions on buyer-paid costs. Are VA loans assumable? Yes, but assumptions after March 1988 require lender approval and buyer qualification. And hashtag 128313 VA special programs. What is the Interest Rate Reduction Refinance Loan, IRRRL? A streamlined VA refinance with minimal requirements and a 0.5% funding fee. What is the Native American Direct Loan, NADL? A VA-issued loan for eligible Native American veterans on federal trust land. What are SAH and SHA grants? Grants for severely disabled veterans to adapt or build homes. SAH offers up to $73,000, SHA up to $14,000. And hashtag 128313, qualifying for a VA loan, borrower requirements. What is residual income and VA loan qualification? Income left after debts and housing costs to cover daily living expenses. What is the recommended debt-to-income, DTI, ratio for VA loans? Ideally 41% or less. Are compensating factors considered by lenders? Yes, such as good credit, low debt, stable income, and tax benefits. What credit score is generally required for VA loans? Most lenders look for a minimum score of 620. Can you qualify after bankruptcy or foreclosure? Yes, after a typical 2-year waiting period. Why do VA loans have lower default rates? Strict residual income guidelines help ensure long-term affordability. When is PMI required on a conventional loan? When the loan-to-value, LTV, ratio is over 75 to 80%. What does PMI do for lenders? It protects lenders against borrower default. When does PMI automatically terminate under the Homeowners Protection Act? When the LTV reaches 78% of the original property value. Can borrowers request PMI termination early? Yes, once LTV drops below 80% if they are current on payments. Refinancing. Why might someone refinance a mortgage? To get a better rate, shorten term, switch loan types, or cash out equity. What are some costs associated with refinancing? New application, appraisal, title insurance, closing costs, and starting a new loan term. What's a risk of refinancing with predatory lenders? Teaser rates, equity stripping through cash outs, and hidden fees. Mortgage participation agreements. What is a participation agreement among mortgagees? Multiple lenders share ownership of a mortgage instrument and its payments. What is a cooperative in mortgage participation? Multiple mortgagors share responsibility for a single mortgage, usually in multifamily housing. How do mortgagee-mortgager partnerships work? The lender also has ownership in the project, adding financial security and shared interest. Predatory lending. What is predatory lending? Unethical lending practices that overcharge consumers via high fees, inflated rates, and false info. Give examples of predatory lending practices. Inflated appraisals, hidden fees, falsified income, racial interest discrimination. What laws protect against predatory lending? RESPA, TILA, HOPA, and California's covered loan law. What does HOPA do? Adds protections under TILA for home equity loans, including disclosure and counseling requirements. Mortgage fraud. What is illegal property flipping? Buying low, falsely appraising high, and quickly selling with kickbacks. What is a silent second? An undisclosed second loan used to cover the down payment. What is equity skimming? Investor rents a property without making mortgage payments, leading to foreclosure. Name a red flag of mortgage fraud. Unrealistic income, limited credit history, drastic price changes without justification. 1031 exchange, tax deferred. What is a 1031 exchange? A way to defer capital gains taxes by reinvesting proceeds into a like-kind property. What must investors use for a valid exchange? A qualified intermediary, QI, who handles the transaction. What are the timeline rules for a 1031? 45 days to identify property, 180 days to close. What is boot in a 1031 exchange? Cash or non-qualifying property received during the exchange, taxable. What are the 3 property identification rules in a 1031 exchange? 3 property rule, any value. 200% rule, combined value less than or equal to 200% of original. 95% rule, must acquire 95% of identified value. Reverse 1031 exchange. What is a reverse exchange? Buying the replacement property before selling the original. Are reverse exchanges subject to 1031 deadlines? Yes, 45 days to identify, 180 to close still apply. Installment sales. What is an installment land contract? Buyer pays over time, seller keeps the title until fully paid. Why would a seller use an installment sale? To defer capital gains taxes over time. What's the buyer's risk in an installment sale? If they default, they lose the property and all paid money. Homeownership tax deductions, post-TCJA. How much mortgage interest is deductible, 2018 to 2025? Interest on loans up to $750,000, joint, $375,000, separate, if used for buying/improving a home. Can you deduct interest from a home equity loan? Only if the funds were used to improve the home and the loan is secured by the property. What is the SALT deduction cap? $10,000 for state and local taxes, including property taxes. Where are deductions claimed for personal versus rental property? Personal, Schedule A. Rental, Schedule E. Why do fewer people itemize mortgage interest now? The standard deduction increased under the TCJA, making itemizing less common. Loan disclosures, loan estimate and closing disclosure. What is the loan estimate? The loan estimate is a 3-page form provided by lenders within 3 business days of a loan application. It outlines key loan terms, projected payments, closing costs, and important details about the loan. When must the loan estimate be provided? The loan estimate must be delivered within 3 business days after the borrower submits a loan application. What details are included in the loan estimate? Loan terms, projected payments, closing costs, costs at closing, and comparison information. What happens if any loan terms change after providing the loan estimate? If terms change, e.g., interest rate or down payment, the lender must provide a revised loan estimate. What is the closing disclosure? The closing disclosure provides the final details about the loan, including terms, monthly payments, closing costs, and transaction summaries. It must be given to the borrower at least 3 business days before closing. When is the closing disclosure provided? The closing disclosure must be delivered at least 3 business days before loan consummation. What should a borrower check in the closing disclosure? Verify loan terms, projected payments, closing costs, and any discrepancies between the loan estimate and the closing disclosure. What is the difference between the loan estimate and closing disclosure? The loan estimate outlines estimated terms and costs, while the closing disclosure confirms final terms, costs, and amounts due. HUD mission and key programs. What is HUD's mission? HUD's mission is to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and provide quality, affordable housing for all. Name 2 programs run by HUD. The Federal Housing Administration, FHA, and the Government National Mortgage Association, Ginnie Mae. What is the role of Ginnie Mae? Ginnie Mae helps with the creation of mortgage-backed securities by ensuring the federal government's commitment to these securities.